Hi, all. So, another talk, and just as a disclaimer, I'm still in the room with a fan, and I say that because a lot of my previous followers know me for ASMR content, and I'm really picky about my audio quality, usually, and I don't like to have anything humming in the background. It can be a little bit difficult to clean up and distracting, but it probably won't be in this, I think. So just for those of you that notice the difference, that's why. I've also had people notice cicadas or waves in the background of my videos and like, is that my audio? And then no, it's mine. So I just want to let you all know. So today's talk, or this evening's talk, or for wherever you are listening, is about how to pray and the anatomy of a treatment. And I want to say just right off the bat, when I say pray, when I say treatment, it's the same thing as a manifestation. But I think that when we say a prayer or a treatment, those are specifically understood to be the verbal output that people create in order to create the manifestation. So a manifestation's counterpart would be an affirmation. And I'm going to touch on affirmations for sure, but I'm focusing more on treatments and prayers because treatments and prayers are a bit more like spells, in that they tend to be a little bit more, they can have a little bit more nuance to them. Whereas affirmations can be anything that you affirm to yourself, but they tend to be shorter and simpler. A lot of people focus on affirmations being I am. And I think that is a great core quality for a great affirmation. However, I don't think that it actually has to be a rule, because it's really the I and not the I am that does it, because the am is often inferred by the other parts of the affirmation. For example, you can have an affirmation that says something like, I am trusting of the universe's divine guidance, or you can also say, I always trust my intuition. So that second one is just as good as an affirmation, but it does not say I am, because always I'm really bad at, I'm a native English speaker, so that means that I don't really remember the terminology we use, but the always trust, those verbs are the be, the am and be are being verbs, right? So those, you just need that kind of verb, basically. You don't have to use am, you can use the verb. For example, I just wrote, if you go into my Instagram, you'll see I make 4 kinds of posts. One is like a personal journal. Another one is this color-coded text carousel that is about manifestation or whatever. Then the next one is also kind of like a personal touch-in update that does not include my picture. And then there is a reel. So if you look at the color-coded carousel post, usually I end them with affirmations. And for instance, the affirmations that I wrote for this week's post was about surrender, and about how surrender is a really key quality in manifesting, and in spirituality, and just in your journey in life in general. And I'm going to make a full blog version of that post coming up soon. If you didn't know, I have a WordPress blog. Some people prefer content in that way. I totally get it. And that's at thatwhich.creates.com, WHICH. But anyway, my affirmations for this week, and I'm using this as an example so that you could see that when creating an affirmation, you don't always actually have to use I am, and sometimes trying to make it fit that format is difficult. So we have, I relax, release, and allow for divine guidance. You see how that's very actionable? Like as you say that, just say that to yourself. I relax, release, and allow for divine guidance. Right? So that actually has the action, the being verbs in it. I relax. Not, it's the same thing as saying I am relaxed. It just says I do relax, and it implies that I was relaxed, am relaxed, and will be relaxed in the future. I relax. Another example of a simple affirmation without the I am is I trust Creator to do what needs doing. Or I surrender control to divine and perfect consciousness. And I want to table the word perfect. We're going to get into that in a minute about treatments. Now, this last affirmation, I normally include an affirmation that is a bit more like a treatment, or what I like to call a statement, capital statement, which is a word or phrase that manifests a state. Simple as that. And again, they tend to be a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more eloquent, aka they're longer. And they don't tend to start with I am. So the one that I included for this week was, what my conscious mind cannot solve, I trust my heart to clarify. So with that, because it's pretty cool to know how to make your own affirmations. Like I said, it's true that starting with I am is a great way to start filling in. If you've never done it too, right? Just write I am 6 times and then fill in whatever you want to come after that. I am brave and confident. I am loved and very lucky. I am always experiencing beautiful things. I am feeling whole and connected to spirit. You could just, whatever it is that you want, you could use it as a really great exercise. However, I do personally feel like, so we all have the choice. You can continue using affirmations that way, or we can move towards what we call statements. And statement and prayer are very simple, but I feel like the main difference is the context, which I'll get into in a second. But that a statement or a treatment is said like in the moment, and prayer is both what you say and the state that you are in. Remember, like Neville Goddard talks about prayer as being a state akin to sleep. Prayer suggests a slightly altered state of consciousness, whereas a statement does not require you to do that. It's not necessarily going to be from a meditative state, but prayer usually and ideally is. If you belong to any faith that requires or suggests prayer, or if you pray on your own, you know that you kind of do want to get yourself into a particular space and a particular mindset, and change your vibration, and then you start praying. Although it's true that we sometimes will just kind of pray to ourselves. And it's like an affirmation. So I'm going to talk about treatments in prayer. I feel like for now, that's all I need to say about prayer, but let's go into treatments. So treatments are where we got a lot of our teachings around consciousness and manifestation in the mid-19th century. Came from people who call themselves metaphysicians, and that is still a term that's used today. It's the term that I prefer, rather than coach or anything like that, because I'm doing my thing. But yeah, I really like it, and a lot of the people that we're familiar with were also considered at that time metaphysicians, which I think is a much more accurate and properly positioned title than just calling people manifestation coaches or whatever. So a lot of times they will use a format for their treatments. It was what was called a treatment. So these days, the way the culture generally is that we look to manifestation coaches to guide us through manifestation. And maybe you buy a coaching session from them, right? And then they kind of teach you about your manifestation, and they maybe give you some prompts or tools to help you. And that's really cool. And I think that's really useful. I think also that metaphysicians did coach. A lot of them wrote books and had seminars and taught people their tools. So they did the same thing. However, there was a part of what metaphysicians did that was a little bit more like what we would know in other cultures as like a spiritual, what would we call this? It depends on the culture that you're in, but basically most indigenous cultures would have some sort of a spiritual person that you go to when you need something fixed, right? And a lot of times they also may invoke spirits, and they may involve herbs, and we're not going to get into that. Metaphysicians don't necessarily do that. But the point here is that those are people that you would go to saying, I have a spiritual ailment and I need you to give me something. I need you to treat me to fix the ailment. So this is what metaphysicians did. So when you read like Neville Goddard, and I'm specifically going to focus on Florence Scovel Shinn here. I think she was really, really great. I feel like Neville Goddard is very popular. He's so good. And Florence Scovel Shinn, who I feel is a little bit more overlooked, deserves just as much accolade and it's true that how she approached it was a little bit more specifically metaphysical, in terms of being a metaphysician. And I don't think, I mean, I've read a bunch of her books. I'm just trying to like mentally think back here, but she didn't really speak from the Bible as much. I think she had just kind of channeled her thing and was talking about it. So metaphysicians give treatments, and the treatment often comes in the form of a statement. So where you have maybe an herbolario, which you would go to and say, I have a spiritual ailment, and they may do limpia or something like that on you. You may go to a babalao, and they would say, you need to do this to this spirit, and I'll give you this, right? Metaphysician says, okay, here's your thing. What's your problem? What are you trying to manifest? And they would sit and concentrate or channel the right message to give to you. And that message is like a spell, that they're going to give to you. And they'll say it over you, and that may be it for you, but it's also that you take it with you and you say it over yourself. And now you can, boom, kind of have this miraculous change in your life. And regardless of who was doing it, this is very consistent. You'll see with Florence Scovel-Shin, Connie, I can't remember her last name. Martinez? No, I don't think it was. But there's another, I'll mention her down below, but there's another metaphysician, and they all say the same thing. So this is what we're going to get into. There's an anatomy to a statement. So when it comes to manifesting, if you've been around on social media, listened to different coaches, you may have heard, this is also common in witch talk, because again, it's all phrasing, it's all spells, that we'll say something like this: to the good of all and to the harm of none, or to the highest outcome of all involved. And we put these bookend clauses on what we say that we want to happen. This is a very important aspect of manifesting. So when you're dealing with just basic affirmations, you don't have to do this. And this is why I say those affirmations are powerful. There's no hierarchy to this, but they are a blunt weapon. And there's like a kind of a shimmer that they don't necessarily have. You can use them very easily, repeatedly, and they build up and they build up, and they're going to help you alter your reality just like anything else. But a full statement, a spell that is cast like this, they're a bit more powerful because they're longer. The thing about words, remember, is that they're very fiddly. They're very powerful, and the problem is they have connotations and little things hidden in between the lines. And that's why I talk so much about being very specific about words and understanding what words actually mean, what connotations they carry, what shadows they cast. And so we also have to understand that for as much as we can be specific about those things, we can't cover all of our bases. We're not perfect. And so we need to put these safety bookends on things. It's kind of like how in magic, when you're casting a physical spell, you have something between the spell and you, just in case something goes awry. If it blows up, if it comes back at you or whatever, it's going to come back at the wand or whatever is the medium in between, and not you, right? This is like that. This is almost like a nice bit of legalese, because we are soliciting something from universal law. Universal law knows all the ins and outs, and we don't necessarily know them. So we're just going to say, just in case this and just in case that. So the first thing that is very common is to have a opening clause that states, to the good of all and to the harm of none, or to the best outcome of all involved. And you can actually put this anywhere. I like to put it at the beginning. But this you're putting there to make sure that when your manifestation happens, when your miracle shows up, it does not have this monkey's paw situation where it showed up, but it came through some negative means, or it came at the cost of someone else's integrity, or it harmed some other entity in some way. You don't want that. And I will tell you that as you progress with manifestation, as you refine your abilities, you're going to want to make sure that happens. Because remember what I've said is that we're always manifesting. And all the negative things that we've experienced as adults, because again, little children are not responsible for the reality, but all the negative things that we've experienced as adults, we manifested them. So it's totally possible to manifest things with negative outcomes, even if you're trying to manifest something positive. I have done this multiple times. Lots of other people, I'm sure, can share stories. I think it is, I can't remember which metaphysician said this, but they related a short story, and they just said that they were talking about this kind of behavior, that making sure that you have a nice clause. And they said somebody was asking to have like $1,500 every month. And so the first month she started out, she said, I want to have this $1,500 by, let's say, the 12th of the month. And she did her manifestation, and then her daughter was hit by a car. And the legal settlement for her being hit by the car was $1,500, and the check arrived on the day that she said. So this is why you need to make sure. So first part of this anatomy, this is almost like if you've been in school and taken like your language class and they teach you the parts of the sentence, this is what we're doing here. So the first thing you may want to do is put this here, but make sure, if not, that it's somewhere at the beginning or the end of your statement, that what happens does not harm anyone and does benefit everyone. Okay? Now, the second part that's really important, and this particular phrase is very consistently unaltered. I've read it in many different metaphysicians will say this. I don't know if one person just started doing it, or I think they just kind of intuit it. Is with perfection and grace. And I don't hear this as much from modern metaphysicians or like manifestation coaches, but I think it's a really nice one. So perfection and grace means that what arrives, your manifestation shows up in such a way that there's not a flaw to it. And the reason we want to say that is because we are imperfect beings. That's not a bad thing. All it means is that since we are parts of the whole, we are not the whole whole, and the whole whole is perfect. The whole whole is our creator. The whole whole is God. So what we are saying basically is that we want this thing to come with it is just smacking of God's perfection. It is just, this is something, it comes so well. It is chef's kiss. It comes so well. It's got God's name all over it. It's just very miraculous. You could also say it is miraculous. However, saying perfection and grace is a bit more specific, because I think sometimes when we say miraculous, it could be almost a little neutral, like it was miraculous, but it's kind of crazy and I don't even know, So we're going to say perfection and grace. Perfection is that quality of being just perfect, just fitting in perfectly with everything. And grace, meaning that it has an allowance to it. It almost flowed in. You could ask for something and you're like, I need this immediately, but sometimes maybe it comes a little harshly. I personally have experienced manifesting a house, but then I manifested it too fast, and it was kind of like very jarring to accept the manifestation. So grace, also disclaimer, I didn't say the perfection and grace part when I manifested this, and I was affirming and affirming and affirming, like, oh, I've got this house, I already have it, and it showed up, but it was challenging. So perfection and grace, it's going to be so indescribably, you just know it's just whole, it's perfect, it just arrives perfectly. It shows up in your life with so much rightness and ease. It's like it makes itself right at home. It's almost maybe like it's always been there, or it was always clearly meant for you. It just feels right. It fits perfectly. Okay, so another clause is, I feel like this is touched on in perfection and grace, but this is also one that you'll hear a lot from like law of attraction, or the sentiment is there. You want this to arrive in alignment with divine will. So there are other ways to say this, and this is definitely something that is said in a lot of prayers, where like, if God wills, or I don't like to put the if, just because I feel like we should feel like we're a little bit more connected with God. So it's like with your will, not if, But that's basically what this says. So it's just saying that what comes is not just that this thing miraculously shows up, but that this thing that shows up is in alignment with God's plan for you. We want to make sure this whole thing is so smooth, okay? So that's why. So those are the bookends that you want to put either at the beginning or the end or somewhere in your statement. So now we go into how do we construct your spell, basically, and you have to get at the fundament of what you want. And sometimes this can be tricky. So, for instance, there's a difference between wanting to be able to travel the world, wanting to take a round trip around the world and hit 12 countries, okay? And wanting to make $100,000 a year. Both of those affirmations sound like you would be fine affirming for, I would like to be rich and make $100,000 a year, right? However, one of them is solely making $100,000 a year, okay? And there's an issue with that. I'm going to put it on the side. The other one is that you want to take a trip. You want to be able to take this around the world trip. You want to be able to take the trip. Now, we may start from a place of, I want to be able to afford it. And so you actually start affirming for money, but you don't want money. You want to go on a trip. And if it's just the trip that you want, you don't need to get in the way of figuring out how you get that trip. That would be manifesting from the 3D. So if you want a trip, manifest that you're going on the trip. If you want the money, manifest that you're going on the money. But now coming back to that table, I will say, we almost always want money for a specific reason. Now, the universe can make money come out of nowhere. And sometimes it's better not to be specific about money. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you specifically need a specific income or whatever. But a lot of times we're asking for income for a secondary goal. Like, I want to move out of the country, or I want to buy a larger car for my family, or I want to, like I said, go on a trip. You may receive those things as gifts. You may receive those things by happenstance. And you'd be surprised at what can happen. For instance, I recently had something happen to me where I'm pretty sure, I have to speak about this in vague terms, sorry, but I'm pretty sure that because I affirmed that I wanted this thing to happen, a legal rule was bent for me, and I got a form signed by a government that technically, I guess, wasn't supposed to be filled out. And now I was thinking that I may have had to affirm for $3,000 to pay for what the alternative was going to be, since I couldn't do the thing that I wanted. But I sat back and I said, no, the thing that I want, it can totally happen. And strangely enough, it did. I did not need the $3,000. And even if I was affirming for the $3,000, what I really would have been affirming for is, I want to have this form signed. You see what I mean? So it was more efficient to go, you know what? No, I think it can happen. Instead of thinking about having to have $3,000 show up when I didn't necessarily need $3,000 to show up for any particular reason. So be sure that what you want at the core of your manifestation. This is also why when people talk about like SP manifestation, I do not agree. I don't think it's wrong. I just personally do not vibe with, manifest that they'll text you, manifest that they'll call you. I think that is such a waste of energy. If you want to be in a relationship with this person, then manifest that you're in a relationship with this person. There's no way that you can end up in a relationship without them contacting you in some way. So if you want to go on a date, or you want to get a phone call, or you want them to kiss you, that would be implied in you having a relationship with them. So again, even if that was your manifestation, right? Like, I have heard of people going, I want to go to this dance with somebody and I'm going to manifest that. Cool. But why did you want to manifest that? Because you want to be in a relationship with them, right? And I've seen what happened in that particular example is that person was caught on a long manifestation process because they kept having to manifest every step. They manifested going to the dance, but because they did not manifest being in a committed relationship with that person after the dance, they weren't in a relationship still. They just went on that date. You see what I mean? So really get at the root of what it is that you want out of your manifestation. I'll give you another example. If you want a particular job, do you want that job because you want to make a certain amount of money? Or do you want that job because that job feels like it would be an aligned line of work for you and that you feel like you would feel more useful and happy there than in your current job. Okay, so again, if you have some kind of financial goal where you need to be making a certain amount of money, then just manifest that the money shows up. But if you want to feel that you have an aligned profession that brings you joy and makes the most use out of your gifts, wink, wink, manifest that. Don't mention the specific job. I mean, unless that's really right for you. I can't tell you what's right for you, but you see what I'm saying. So, when it comes to a treatment, let's talk about the trip. So you can say something like, to the good of all and to the harm of none, I now claim my dream vacation around the world, and it arrives in perfection and grace and alignment with divine will. And then you may say amen or some words of thanks, right? Okay. So there's another kind of treatment. This is again where I'm getting really specifically into Florence Scovel Shinn. She had this really great way of affirming or giving treatments that I do feel very aligned with. So I, on my Instagram, I'm going to actually pull this up here, have a reel that people really liked, and I want to get into doing more of these. Just haven't had a whole lot of time, but I was like, oh, this is really great. Let me share this. So here's an affirmation. It is a statement for manifesting, and it's something that I came up with when I was like, oh, we can deal with a lot of blocks when we start to manifest. And how do you clear those blocks? Because you need to get rid of them, right? So the statement is, I collapse and release all alternate realities based in fear, lack, and insecurity. With this, I close all portals to negative outcomes. So do you see what the difference is? A statement can be a little bit more eloquent. It is more like a spell, and it is specifically using very evocative. You need to find words that to you are very evocative. They are on the cusp of or fully generating a visualization. They carry a lot of meaning in them. There maybe is movement in them, like how and I say in that one statement, I collapse and release all alternate realities based in fear, lack, and insecurity. So when you're thinking of your challenge, the thing that you want to, like the boulder that you want to remove from your path, or the thing that you want to bring into your path, really sit with it and let something distill, because that's how you get a good state. You have to let it distill, and your mind will give you the exact right words or not. And this is definitely something that I can help you out with. It's definitely like one of the ways that I love working. And there are simpler ones too, like that one's got kind of like a two-part to it. There's another one that I use this just to help you calm down and like sit back and let your affirmations, your manifestations show up, because we can get kind of like caught up in the 3D. And it is, like a flower, my miracle blooms before me. Like a flower, it cannot be rushed. And like a flower, it opens with grace and perfection. I feel so much better just reminding myself that. So you see a little bit more poetic, a little bit more of a spell than your standard, I am calm and relaxed and trusting in this moment. Super cool to use that kind of statement or affirmation. But there are so many different tools, and we have to find the ones that work for us. And also sometimes different things for different situations. For self-concept, maybe I am statements are great when you're working on that self-concept, and we can get a lot of manifestations will come out of fixing your self-concept, because you're fixing the parts of you that had negative self-talk or think that you're not worthy or all that kind of stuff. But when you want specific things to show up, that is when we start turning to prayer and statements. And prayer, I think, can be really loose. What really matters in prayer is your connection to spirit, your intent. You just say anything. Prayer can be anything. You can just say, Creator, listen, this is what I'm dealing with, and I want you to give me clarity, or I need this, or please give me guidance, give me grace, give me patience. Creator, thank you, thank you. For me, I almost never come to Creator like, this is my problem. Because the moment I'm in that space, I'm just like, you've already given me so many things. And I know that anything I ask for, you've already given me. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So with prayer, like I said, prayer could be anything. But as many people have said, the most powerful prayer is just to say, to speak to Creator and say thank you. Statements, however, are a little bit more eloquent, a little bit more nuanced. They're very much spells. And so I just wanted to share with you these clauses and these properties of a good statement, because if you misuse them, it can frustrate you. You can manifest things like halfway. I've done that a few times. It's so annoying. It's like very cool to see that manifesting is real. But oops, I made a huge mistake. Or this can also happen when you go back and forth mentally, and we're all a little prone to it, like where you manifest something and you say it's totally done, but you doubt it. Then you end up getting like a half result or a flickering result, like it shows up but then you can't keep it, or something dumb like that. And so this is all just about making it a more efficient and happy process for you. So when you are, I want to focus on statements here. The other two are pretty simple. Like I said, prayer can be anything, although thank you works super well. And affirmations tend to be shorter, tend to start with I am statements, but you don't have to use I am. You just need I, verb, I, being, I. You could say I always. I use that one a lot. I always get exactly what I want. I always end up with the happiest outcomes. I'm always being favored and chosen. And you can also say something like people. I say that too. People are always favoring me. People are always choosing me, right? Things like that. So it doesn't have to be I am, but it tends to be. Statements are something that I think maybe helps to meditate on. Because I have received many statements actually, and a lot of them, when I first started receiving them, I received them from our mushroom teachers. And so there was one that was just treatment for anxiety, that was a peace on this earth. And in that one, it's like, you are the peace. If you've ever done mushrooms, you know how they can deepen words so much. You just have to get it. But a peace on this earth, and white light surrounds me. Blessings abound in me. That's another one that if you'd like to use, you can carry that one. But yeah, so find those statements, find those gifts, because Spirit will give them to you. And these are your words of power. That's what all of this is, words of power. But we're going to talking about today the anatomy, just to make sure, because powerful things come with responsibilities and risks. So just to wrap it up, you want to make sure that this does not harm anyone, and it is beneficial to the collective. So to the good of all, to the harm of none, or to the highest outcome of all involved is a clause that says this. You also want to make sure that this is coming from divine will. And another last thing I want to say is, even when we say, Dear God, sometimes there are forces at work in this system, in the matrix, or however you want to talk about it, that have actually made it so that when you say God, you may not be speaking to God. And so I did remember that this was brought up to my mind earlier today. Sometimes it can be very useful to be specific and say a name of God. If you are Muslim, you know exactly what I mean. If you're not, what I am referring to is that God has specific titles so that you know who specifically you're speaking to. Because sometimes, depending on just energies around you, things in your lineage, forces at work or at play in the network, just saying God isn't enough. Or just, especially don't just pray out like, oh, please let this thing happen. Like, you don't know who's listening. So to say Creator, the creator of all in the universe, or my creator, or the one who bestows all blessings, things like that. You see how that's very specific, and we're specifically saying, hey, I only want to talk to the one that did this whole thing, who's benevolent. This is what I'm asking for. I'm not asking for anybody to do any weird stuff, because there are forces that will absolutely grant you your blessing and your miracle, or what seems like a miracle. It seems like a miracle, and then you're in trouble later. So I'll say that. So you want to say, I want this to happen in alignment with divine will. If there's another way that feels right to you to say it, say that. But you just want to say that this is in alignment with Creator's plan for you, but also specifically, like most importantly, hey, as I say this, I'm talking to my Creator and nobody else. So whatever comes, it's coming from them. And then you also want to put in that you want this to arrive in perfection and grace. I personally don't know of any other substitute for perfection and grace. I think it works really well. It's pretty flawless, but that's perfection and grace for you. So those are the 3 clauses, okay? Once more, just to wrap it up, you want to make sure that it is to the benefit of everyone and to the harm of none. You want to make sure that you are speaking to and receiving this blessing, this manifestation, this miracle from our Creator, our benevolent, all-knowing Creator. And you want to make sure that this miracle, this manifestation shows up in a way that is graceful, that it lands, that it's easy for you to hold, that it doesn't come in roughly or weird or sideways or anything. Those are the 3 clauses for making your statements. So this may sound a little different because I'm recording this postscript and splicing it in, but there are 3 more clauses that are useful in making your statements or your treatments or however you want to say this. I also wanted to note that, of course, this is all very much the same as magic. This is basically an incantation. I work with incantations. I just do that in the form of metaphysical treatments. So aside from the 3 clauses that I just gave you, here are 3 more important ones. One is the word now. So the word now is very much like the invocation I am. It is instantaneous. It is saying that is the state that I am inhabiting at this moment. At this moment, this state is true. At this moment, this thing has come to pass. Similarly, so the reason that now is important is, 1, it is a trigger word. But 2, when we are making a treatment or an affirmation for something that we do not experience currently, of course, the easy one to go for is the example of wealth or something like that, looking for more abundance. Let's talk about maybe wellness. Maybe you have struggled with illnesses and you are manifesting that you are healthy. And if you start saying, I am perfectly healthy, there can be resistance to that, as we well know. And some people may say, just keep affirming and affirming and affirming that you're perfectly healthy, and eventually it'll stick. And that is true, but I'm all about making things very easy. And we make things easier by tending to what needs tending to. So by using the word now in a treatment, it gives acknowledgement to that part of our subconscious mind that goes, yeah, listen, I have distinct memories of the old state, and I'm not going to let you gaslight me into thinking that that didn't happen. Honestly, that can be one of our blocks, and it's not really a bad thing that we still have memories of previous states. Collecting memories is part of how we move through the world, and it's part of how we form our ego, and our ego is a useful system that helps us stay sane and navigate. It can just get in the way when it puts itself first, or it doesn't allow for us to make changes. Using the word now lets it go, okay, I hear that you're saying that there's a difference. So if I'm manifesting my wellness and I had been ill and I'm saying I'm perfectly healthy, I'm perfectly healthy, that part of my mind knows, you have been in and out of doctor's offices with mysterious diagnoses and paying for all these prescriptions for years. That happened, and everybody knows it happened. But if I say, I now experience the most perfect health and divine wellness, well, that's hard to argue with. Right? Our subconscious mind has no argument. Maybe happening now. And sure, we can struggle with, well, but I'm still sick, right? We're working through it. But using now, like I said, does 2 really important things. It is a trigger word. It's like lighting a match. Okay? It is like you casting with your wand in that moment. It is the impetus. And like I said just now, it also gives some acknowledgement to the subconscious mind that you are experiencing a difference in state. And it's okay if you remember that your previous state was different. Similarly, we know that Neville's wife used the I remember when technique when old stuff would come up. So it was more useful and powerful and efficient for her to acknowledge that there was a difference that occurred rather than just affirming of this flat, oh, it's always been this way. Sometimes it's always been this way is a useful angle. Sometimes it's not. So we have to do what's appropriate. Another thing that is useful is using the phrase, this is an alternative to using in alignment with divine will. We can talk about divine appointment. Divine appointment says much the same thing. This is saying this is coming direct from my divine creator. It is specifically suggesting that this thing that I am calling in is the one for me. This one is the vibrational match for my highest expression. So I hear this and use this most often in terms of like income or vocation or spouse, because these things can be very sensitive, and these are also the kinds of things that can come to us out of alignment and seem very appealing at first. But if it's not in alignment, then we're really entangled and we're kind of in a mess. So for instance, if you are manifesting for a partnership, you don't want to just manifest for a good partner or a wealthy partner or even just a loving partner. What you really want, if you are on a spiritual path, is your divinely appointed partner. You want the person that God would hand to you distinctly and specifically. So you can say, I am manifesting so-and-so, or I call in this and that in alignment with divine will, or you can switch that out for saying, I want my divinely appointed, and then you fill in the blank. Like I said, this is also really useful with money, just making sure that your money comes in a good way. And you can say your divinely appointed income, which is forever abundant, which is unlimited, it's spotless, it doesn't come with bad karma. So the last clause, the actual last clause that I want to give you here is, I cannot believe I forgot this one. It's very useful. As I said, these clauses are great catch-alls because we are human, we are flawed, and we don't necessarily include everything perfectly. So this clause is, may this or something greater manifest. The way I use it is, may this or something greater manifest to the highest outcome of all involved. That's because that's how I have put them all together. I've kind of collected them. And that is just a general statement for manifestation, not necessarily for my treatments, but again, these are the parts. You can rearrange them however you want. It's just important that they're there. So this or something greater is the clause, and you use it to leave a space for creator, for divine consciousness to improve on what we're asking for. Because honestly, why wouldn't you? So let's say you are asking for, you're asking for a raise. And instead, you end up getting a way better job at a different company. So when you asked for a raise, you asked from a point of, I am seeking to improve my job position. I'm not getting enough out of this job, or I'm not getting enough for it, and I'm asking for a raise, okay? But if you leave that space open for divine consciousness to improve on what you're asking for, you could end up leaving that job, getting another job and another company that's going to give you the raise because they're paying you more, but it's also more engaging. There's more room for you to move up in the company. It gives you better hours. Sometimes we're asking too small. So it can be useful to leave a little space in your statement, in your affirmation, in your prayer, for your creator to improve on what you're asking for. Why not? Like I said, why not? So that's adding this or something greater, this or something better. And of course, like I said, you're just going to sit and let the words refine, and you'll get your right phrase. And again, if you would like a treatment, because that's what they call this is a really great way to get a tool to deal with any situation in your life, and I'm available for those. You can email me at iamthatwitch, WHICH, @gmail.com, or just use my website and book a service. So all of that information is down below. And if you listen to this whole thing, thank you. Please like, and if you're not subscribed. And of course, I hope that this helps you. And if not, at the very least, that you found this talk relaxing. peace.